everyone. Welcome to the Chaga Company. I am Gavin Escolar, founder of the Chaga Company, and we are with Callen Christensen, who is a naturalist, an awesome explorer, and all around your neighborhood forager dude from Fairbanks, Alaska. Welcome to Chaga Chat. Callen, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you, Gavin. And it's Callen. It's pronounced Callen.
Callen,
Yeah,
sorry.
it's all good.
But yes, thank you. So Callen is one of my foragers who actually forage chaga for me in Fairbanks, Alaska. So, Callen, so why chaga?
Oh, my goodness. Well, chaga is just another one of those wonderful things that the forest avails itself to us. You know, people think of Alaska, when they think of Alaska, they think of like this desolate, frozen wasteland of tundra. But the reality is as soon as you walk into the forest, you're instantly surrounded by food and medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so bountiful. And it's just a matter of education, because a lot of these tools that nature provides to us can really help people. So why chaga? I'd say number one, it's delicious. Assuming it's being brewed properly. And then it's so good for you. It gives the body everything it needs with all the ionic trace minerals you get from it. And it's good stuff. Good stuff.
And by the way, how cold is it there right now?
It's about hovering around freezing. Or late April right now, and it's a sunny day, so it's really clear, and so it's kind of cold, but it's morning still. It's 9 o'clock here, so it'll probably get above freezing today.
Just above freezing. So you guys down on the lower 48, let me tell you, it's cold in Alaska when it's cold, and that's where we get our chaga from. So could you tell us like your process on actually foraging the chaga mushrooms? Where do you get it? It's like, and at the same time, before it comes to me, what kind of love and things that you guys do with it and all of that good stuff?
Yeah. So we go out into generally like the sorry, dog.
No, it's all good.
Hey man, doing an interview, chaga interview. It's all good. So typically we go out into outside of town to state forest or BLM land, and chaga likes to grow only on birch trees. So you look for old birch stands, and it's funny, because we're out there, looking for this medicine, but the reality is being out there is the medicine. And so it's, essentially we're a foraging co-op, so we're really trying to make it a really good job to be out in the woods all the time.
Awesome.
And so we're out there and we're breathing the fresh air and finding the chaga. And when we do find a chaga, typically if it's smaller than about a grapefruit size, you leave that because you want to let it grow. And if you do find a chaga, you just take the outside portion. You don't dig into the tree, because if you dig into the tree, there's a chance that the chaga won't grow back. But if you just take the outer portion that's actually sticking out from the side of the tree, then the chaga will grow back, multiple times for multiple reharvests, and eventually fruit, which is a very fascinating process that's not very well understood. The chaga only fruits at the end of the life cycle of the birch tree, so it only lives on living birch trees, parasitic birch fungus. But although it's a parasite of the birch tree, it's symbiotic with all these other creatures in the ecosystem, being the beetle, which comes and eats the spore mat that is the fruiting body that fruits. It's symbiotic with the woodpecker that then comes and eats the beetle, and I think is responsible for spreading the spores into other birch trees. And it's symbiotic also with Hericium erinaceus subspecies that we have up here that likes to grow on.
So that is closely related to lion's mane, and it's part of the lion's mane family too as well.
That's not for the family, but yeah, it's a food source for lion's mane up here.
Oh, so chaga is a food source for lion's mane, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, so after the chaga fruits, it only fruits right at the end of the life cycle of the birch tree, and it covers that stump. The next season after the birch tree dies, usually it'll break right where the chaga is growing, from a windstorm or something. And then that next season, the chaga is a stored food mass. So it's digested mycelium, and it's actually only about 10% mycelium. The rest of it's like digested bark of of the birch tree, digesting it, making all the sugars and the acids of the birch tree super bioavailable for humans, and which of course is the other species it's symbiotic with. And then it'll split open the bark of the birch tree and produce this gigantic mat of spores.
Oh, wow.
So that, and that's the mushroom. So people call it chaga mushroom. It's kind of a misnomer because the mushroom refers to the fruiting body of the fungus.
Yeah, but so that's awesome. So tell us about your life in Alaska over there. You know, a lot of people are asking me, like, it's like I always tell them that I get it from, you know, from foragers all up in the north and everything else, and I deal with like co-ops like you guys and stuff to get the best chaga mushroom around. So tell us about life over there in Alaska. We're here at the lower 48. You know, it's quite a mystery for us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, Alaska's a great place. It just kind of breeds a certain type of people. I mean, there's good people no matter where you go. You're going to find good people. But, you know, there's a lot of room to breathe around here. And, you know, you just find these gems of human beings living out in the woods, you know, just kind of away from the hubbub. And so there's like a very strong sense of community up here. You know, Fairbanks is actually kind of a metropolitan area. It's the second largest city in Fairbanks. We're pretty far north. We're 200 miles south of the Arctic Circle. And I think in, you know, the borough, we have 100,000 people. But the borough's a big space. In the city, I think it's like 30,000 or something. And yeah, so it's you know, people slow down in the wintertime and hibernate. And then in the summer, it warms up and there's endless light and people, you know, get manic and go crazy and romp around the woods all the time. And, you know, we're surrounded by endless forest that's full of medicine and food. So it's a very, very beautiful place to live. And
it really is, actually, because I've lived in Alaska. It's absolutely fantastic. Could you tell us a little bit? So I'm gonna start showing out some chaga specimens, and if you could tell us what the life cycle is on what's going on. Yes. Do you see this?
I do. Oh, beautiful. So that looks like it's attached to a stump or a limb.
Yes.
Which means that, you know, probably the tree branch was broken and it exposed some of the heartwood of the chaga, and a spore got in there from one of those previously mentioned fruiting bodies.
Yeah.
And that's how it sporulates. And I think that, you know, like the beetle eats it, and then the woodpecker eats the beetle, and they spread the spores that way. Or the wind probably does it too. But
this, as you can see, is like there. The wood is starting to turn into what do you think? Take a look at that.
So that's just wood. That's not chaga.
But look at this. This is chaga right here.
That's that's chaga, and it's much more brighter orange on the inside when it's fresh harvest. There it is. There's that orange color.
Yeah, right over there. So it's like it's in its phase. There's a cross section.
Yeah.
Right?
So you don't want to make tea with the wood. I mean, you could.
No, just going straight up for the chaga and stuff like that. So when you started foraging for chaga, do you know any history about it in Alaskan cultures, or how did you come across from it? Did you get it from the natives, or where? So
I was learning about how to detox like 6 years ago, because I was learning about all the heavy metals and stuff in modern industrial culture, and came across this article talking about chaga as a method of detoxing, which I don't know if there's any research about that particular aspect of chaga. But I saw a picture of it. I said, hey, wait a second, that's growing right outside my house.
Okay.
And so I went out there, and sure enough, that was chaga. I broke off a little chunk and boiled it up, and it was amazing. The moment it touched my lips, I thought to myself, like, this is like really good for my body, and my body started craving it. And that whole week, it was chugging chaga. And at the end of that week, I had like a beautiful dream that just kind of sealed the deal and made sure that chaga is something that I wanted to work with and share and bring to people. And so I continued learning about it. And as far as the Native Americans go, there wasn't any information that I had ever found that Native Americans, like a certain article said that there wasn't any information that Native Americans in Alaska used it, but that's bogus. I mean, you know, these First Nation people have been here so long. There's no way they didn't know about chaga. And I recently read an article that was talking about all the different Native Americans that used it, all along in Canada, northern United States, and I believe you're in close contact with a tribe down in Southeast Alaska, South
Yes.
Alaska,
Yeah.
introduced you to Chaga, you know.
Yes, that's right. And then the thing is that there are a lot of like cultural references for natives in Alaska that uses Chaga too as well. And in my other episode, Chaga Chat number 3 with Lawrence Millman, he talked about that actually, and he has it in his book. So
Right on.
you should check it out. But anyways, check. What else is there? So tell us about. You have a Chaga Cooperative over there.
Yeah.
What are your standards on harvesting chaga and ethical practices in order for you to develop this cooperative?
Yeah, cool. So, like I said, you know, I decided I really wanted to start working with Chaga, and rather than, you know, start my own thing, it made more sense to me to work with someone who had already established a business.
Uh-huh.
And so I reached out to a lot of the other people that had Chaga companies up here, and was kind of rather dismayed by their ethical practices, not only with harvesting the chaga, but also with their relationships to the customers, and also their relationships to their harvesters, the people they hired to pick for them. Ultimately, I ended up getting ripped off for one individual that I harvested a lot of chaga for, and I'd roped my friend Josh, and he's on the cooperative with me too, into harvesting chaga with me, and we were talking about it in our frustrations one day. He suggested the idea of a co-op, which is a genius idea, because if there's a co-op, there's no middleman, and essentially, if everyone shares the distribution networks of the foods in the forest, then there's no middleman that serves the profit. So therefore, the harvester can get the best rate, and the consumer is getting good food without getting ripped off. So we started the cooperative about a year ago, and we are a foraging cooperative. We forage lots of things, more than just chaga, but the idea is that the forager is entitled to 75% of the wholesale profit. And as far as the sustainable aspect of it, we actually have a statement on sustainability on our website, chagacoop.com. And right there, we talk about some of the concerns that we've had from, you know, both professionals and amateurs about the efficacy of sustainable chaga harvesting. And as far as I understand it, it is a very threatened species because of its life cycle. You know, this mushroom takes many years to reproduce, and it only reproduces once at the end of life. You know, and so if you remove all the mycelium from those plants, there's a chance that it won't. So what we do is we practice to leave no trace when we're foraging, and we only take the outer portion of the chaga. We leave some mycelium there for it to grow back. And we're actually conducting a study starting this summer. We're working on getting some grant funding, but we want to document what happens, because there's no long-term studies of chaga that I know of that are like 6 to 10 years, you know? So if we start one now, we want to study, you know, what happens to a chaga if you leave it alone, what happens to a chaga if you harvest half of it, all of it. And then also we want to actually artificially inoculate birch trees with the chaga mycelium and also the chaga spores, and see if there can be actually such a thing as truly sustainable chaga harvesting.
So in your experience over there for foraging chaga, how long does it take for chaga to grow this big? So people understand how long something this one would take.
That could be 10 years.
Right? Yeah.
That could be 10 years old, easily.
Yeah. So it takes a long time to grow chaga.
Yes.
That's the thing. Even though that you can culture it and stuff, it does still take a long time. And it's also dependent upon the climate that it's growing onto. Since Alaska is very, very desolate, it grows far slower than the one that's on the lower 48.
That's right. And that brings up a point that I wanted to mention to you, is that I worry that a lot of people, when they do finally get their hands on chaga, they aren't brewing it properly. And I think this is important because you supply people with chaga and you supply them with tea bags. And the reality is that these super dense polypores don't brew the same way as conventional tea, like black and green tea. Whereas if you steep them for 15 minutes, you're gonna get hardly no medicinal benefit from them. So the way to brew chaga is actually low and slow. It's the same with all medicinal mushrooms. So that first time you use it, you don't want to boil it, but you want to expose it to heat for a long period of time. So like in the crock pot on low overnight produces an incredibly rich, sweet, smooth, earthy, beautiful vanilla like flavor with that chaga. And then the next time you can boil the crap out of it and get another batch of chaga. So it's really important that people understand how to brew this medicine so that they're not wasting it.
Yeah, that's around 8 to 12 hour process if you want to do it the right way.
Yeah.
But my chaga elixir powder, we already done that for you by cracking down the chitin walls to just sprinkle it on anything. And that came from your chaga. Some of it is from your chaga too. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Well, they say that the farther north something grows, the more potent it is. And the more
yes. Well, the thing is that it's an adaptogen, right? And we figured that the more desolate the climate is and the more extreme temperature changes, the more adaptogenic properties chaga should have. But any other last words for you before we?
Yeah. I'd say educate yourself about all the medicinal mushrooms because they're very common and they can really help people. I mean, if you actually start diving into it and you start learning about the testimonials and the research, it's sad that these aren't utilized more in our culture, but we kind of have a medical industrial complex here, and you can't really patent a mushroom, which means you can't have exclusive rights to sell a mushroom, which means there's not a lot of money in prescribing mushrooms. But your health is truly in your hands, and it's all about prevention. They say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and that's truly the case with medicinal mushrooms. And chaga is a herald for that because it is. It avails itself to us, and just it doesn't really matter where you are, you'll find goods in the forest that are waiting for you. And it's all about respect and education.
Absolutely.
And the forest, the nature, be grateful and share.
Yes, so true. Thank you so much, Callen.
Yeah, thank you, man.